was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You told me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes.
The case against him?
That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes. Will I what?
Have you reviewed the case against him?
No, I haven't. But I just think he's a bad person. Okay.
All right, so you were just listening to the president there taking some questions in the Oval Office. And one of the questions he was asked was about the potential indictment of his former national security advisor, John Bolton. Well, ABC News is now confirming that in fact has happened. He has been indicted now by a federal grand jury on charges that he allegedly unlawfully transmitted and retained classified documents. This is according to sources that are familiar. I want to bring in our ABC News Washington, D.C. Bureau Managing Editor, Katherine Faulders. She's the one that's been working on this story, breaking the story, her and her team. Katherine, thank you for being here with us. It sounds like, according to some of these sources, there could have been potentially a dozen charges here for him to be indicted on. Do we have any additional information on what this indictment looks like yet?
Yeah, well, we know prosecutors were seeking upwards of 18 or a dozen counts, presumably 18 counts of the retention and transmittal of classified documents. Now, we know from our sources that a federal grand jury has indicted John Bolton for allegedly unlawfully transmitting and retaining classified documents. That's just according to sources. We haven't seen any documents, any court papers yet. They haven't hit the docket, but we do. So we don't exactly know all of the details here, but we do know, obviously, this was an investigation that started under the Biden administration during the Biden Department of Justice, carried over to the Trump Department of Justice. And it comes after nearly 2 months ago when, as you know, federal law enforcement officials searched his home and office in search of classified records. Now, the transmission nature of this indictment will be interesting. It's not exactly clear what that means. We do know, at least from documents that have been previously unsealed, that John Bolton did use a personal email account and AOL account, so they focused on that. There's no indication that he would have transmitted this information directly, if you will, to a foreign adversary, but transmitted it nonetheless, presumably on a private email server. So there is that portion of the indictment and then the retention portion of the indictment. Now, we're told by sources, we're hearing that this indictment could be unsealed soon. It could be unsealed as early as today, and it will be in that document where we get more details about what Bolton allegedly is charged with here.
And so as we watch, and hopefully those will be unsealed, we'll learn some more information there. Certainly Bolton's drawn the ire of the president, especially after this essentially a tell-all book that the president has criticized him for, publishing essentially during the presidency. And that was part of why they searched his home initially, right?
Yes, in part. Both of the investigations are a little bit different here. Obviously, that investigation into Bolton's book started under the first Trump administration. The Biden administration closed that investigation. This second Trump administration didn't reopen that investigation, but continued another investigation about classified documents that was running almost parallel to that other one that had to do with his book. So while it probably will be cited a lot in this indictment about the book that he wrote about his handling of classified information, and a judge, by the way, at the time, when the judge was looking into, when the DOJ was looking into Bolton's handling of classified documents as it related to that book, a judge at the time said that Bolton's handling of classified documents represented a grave concern to him among how he handled those documents. So this Department of Justice will likely argue that there's a pattern here and that Bolton has a pattern of mishandling classified documents. That's likely what they will say. They also will say that Bolton should obviously know the rules around handling classified information. He is a frequent commentator on cable television talking about topics like this, so I can imagine that you will see some of those details when this indictment is ultimately unsealed.
And talking about an indictment like this to potentially one of the president's foes is nothing new. You and I have talked a lot about former FBI Director James Comey, New York Attorney General Letitia James as well being indicted. Is this happening, though, out of the same U.S. Attorney's Office? It sounds like this one's happening in Maryland while the other two in Virginia.
Yeah, this is interesting. So this one is in Maryland. It's a different U.S. attorney in Maryland. And the difference between this investigation and obviously the investigations into James Comey and New York Attorney General Tish James is that this indictment is not being brought against the advice of career prosecutors in the office. That's what was happening with those other investigations. Career prosecutors and even prosecutors who Trump put into that office in Virginia were against bringing those charges. That isn't happening in this case in Maryland. Now, you could argue, obviously, that this is a continuation of potentially why the Department of Justice ramped up this investigation, why they moved quickly on it, because Trump has said that he believes Bolton should be in jail. But it isn't as though behind the scenes that the career prosecutors, those prosecutors who investigate national security matters every single day, they weren't saying to themselves, we should not bring this indictment. Bolton didn't have classified documents. That wasn't happening here. So that's the key difference between this investigation and then, of course, the other two in Virginia.
Oh, that is a really important difference there. Thank you for highlighting it, and well done, you and your team, on this reporting. Katherine Faulders, our thanks to you. I also want to bring in our ABC News legal contributor and Hofstra law professor, James Sample. James, thank you for being here with us. Actually, I'd love for you to jump off what we just heard there from Katherine, highlighting the difference here about this indictment coming on the heels of these other two that we've been talking about with Comey and James, but this one not coming against the advice of career prosecutors like those other two.
Kana, it's great to be with you, and Katherine's reporting is spot on there. I think that the theme here is similar but also different. Similar but different in the sense that, yes, John Bolton is a perceived enemy. There is certainly a retribution component of this, just as there is with James Comey and Letitia James, but there is also a very different factual predicate and a content of the factual predicate here. Even just listening to the conversation between you and Katherine right there, the complexity of this matter is of a whole different scope and scale than the complexity or the relative simplicity, really, and maybe even almost created out of whole cloth context to the Comey and Letitia James charges. You have the differences of this not being an appointee of the president who was appointed seemingly to be the U.S. attorney, specifically so as to bring the charges against James Comey and against Letitia James. This is a career prosecutor. You have career prosecutors in the office who are participating in this as opposed to refusing to sign on to an indictment or resigning en masse. So we have some real differences here. Yes, this does fit the theme, fit the pattern of Donald Trump seeking retribution, going after his enemies, both perceived and real. But this is also a very different context with a much more complex fact pattern, as depicted by the August search of Mr. Bolton's home and office, which required a federal judge to sign off on probable cause for that search to take place. So you're talking about something that is of at least a different level and a different scale and scope.
Yeah, you certainly point that out well. And when you talk about this potential retribution component here, the president was asked about this happening before the news broke that it did, and he referred to him as a bad guy. He said he hadn't reviewed the case against him. But I am curious as to your thoughts here as this news is coming down. We're also hearing from the American Bar Association, one of the largest associations of lawyers in the world. Don't have to tell you that, though, but they are saying they're deeply concerned right now about using prosecutorial power for apparent partisan political ends. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, Kana, I think that their point is well taken. I mean, it's not a matter of one particular case. They're not, I'm sure, saying that just in response to this particular matter. They're talking about an extraordinary pattern in which norms have not been eroded so much as they have been obliterated over the last 9 months, especially with respect to the separation of the White House and the Department of Justice. And so when you see the president of the United States going after law firms, going after media organizations, going after his predecessors, going after advisors, many of whom actually worked for him, including Mr. Bolton. You're talking about a level, and you're seeing yesterday the president holding a press conference, standing behind him, the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, standing next to him, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and standing there with them as well, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, while the president of the United States listed off a number of individuals by name, Adam Schiff, Jack Smith, etc., who he wants to see prosecuted. That is not normal in any way, shape, or form. That is the kind of norm that has existed across Democratic and Republican administrations and has been respected by presidents of both parties. That doesn't seem to be even a factor anymore, much less a significant barrier.
I just had the indictment placed here in front of me. I want to read you one part of it. It says, according to prosecutors here, from about April 9th to August of 22nd, this is 2018 through 2025, they accused Bolton of abusing his position as NSC advisor by sharing more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities as the national security advisor, including information related to the national defense, which was classified as top secret at the time. In a reaction to that allegation.
Yeah, Ken, I mean, these are serious charges, and if proven, these are charges that would be brought under the Espionage Act, and could, in the normal course of events, it will take a long time to prosecute a case like this. This is not an open and shut matter. This is not a straightforward matter. This is the kind of thing that, if convicted, an individual convicted of those charges could face prison time, significant prison time. On the other hand, there's also a kind of rich irony or even sort of a juxtaposition that you're talking about a scenario in which the president of the United States, who himself was going to stand against charges that he mishandled classified documents, boxes of documents at Mar-a-Lago, bringing charges against an individual for allegedly mishandling classified documents. So yes, it does appear as though there are different standards for different individuals, especially after the Supreme Court ruling in the presidential immunity context, but this is certainly a serious matter.
Yeah, the allegations here that say that he sent diary-like entries to people about some of this information. All right, we will continue to discuss this. Katherine, James, our thanks to both of you for being here with us. And